This is Marie from Creations Photography and Design, and I wanted to talk today about a finishing touch for some of your composite images, a way to unify the different resolutions, the different noise levels, the different sharpnesses of each of your images. It's just a way to make anything that you've put together from different parts look a little bit more cohesive. I'm going to start with an image from morguefile.com. It's this little bow tie on a sheet of music that I got some time ago for some composition. I thought this one would be simple enough to use different textures on, to show you what textures did. Now, this doesn't necessarily need unifying, but it will teach you how to use textures in your own work. I'm a big fan. I tend to use lots of them, particularly for backgrounds. I like texture backgrounds. So anyways, let's begin. I know that this is a little bit of a bland image, so I want to add a little bit of something to make it pop. So I'm using this electric bass guitar from a program I have on my computer called Express It. And I think when I first got it, it let me make CD and DVD labels. And it had a whole bunch of music stuff on it, because after all, we all put our music on CDs back in the day. So anyways, I shrunk it down quite a lot and put it here in the corner of the tie. Photographically, it needs to be higher or lower. Actually, if I had my druthers, I'd move the bow tie more towards the right of the image, but I'm going to use it as it was taken, so we're going to go from there. This electric guitar doesn't really blend in with the bow tie very well, so I'm going to change the blend mode, and I have to be on the electric guitar layer. I'm going to change it to, I think, screen is what I used. It begins to blend in with its background just a little bit better. It shows a little bit better. But I also am going to lower the opacity on that to roughly, looks like about 80%. That lets a little bit of the bow tie show through, and it looks like it's more part of the fabric. Now, if I really wanted to get fancy, I'd make a texture map of this bow tie, and I'd add a little bit of warping, distortion to make it work a little bit better. Or I could add a couple of layers to add shadows and highlights to match the bow tie. So I guess I'll start with that. And I always add 2 layers, and I have what I call the light shaping. And now, am I going to be able to do this without having to do it over? And then in CS6 and above, you can tap the tab key and go down to the next layer and name that. And I'm going to call this dark shaping. And to get to the renaming part, I simply double click on whatever name was there. I am going to select both of these layers and change their blend mode to soft light. And on the light shaping layer, now I'm going to cheat a little bit to make life easier. I already have a mask made. So I'm going to click on this mask with my Command or Control key to get actually an outline of the bow tie. So I'm going to go to my light shaping, and I'm going to need a brush. Tap B. I want black and white, so I'm going to tap D for the default. I want white on top, so I'm going to tap X to get white on top. I need a brush that's soft edged. And what I'm doing is I'm holding down my Control and my Option key, and as I move up, the brush gets softer edged, and as I move down, it gets harder edged. If I move to the right, it gets bigger. If I move to the left, it gets smaller. You can do this as well on a PC. I think you have to use the right mouse key while you're doing that. So I'm going to take and brush over this area that's lit on the I'm following the light area. And because I don't really want it to show anymore on the tie, I don't think, I am going to click on that electric guitar. And nope, that's not going to work. So I'm going to leave this for a second, go down to the dark shaping, tap X, get my black, and I'm going to run the black along here where it is on the bow tie. Now, because I have this selected, it didn't get off at all on the music, which is really nice. Now what I'll usually do is I'll add a little blur to these, a little Gaussian blur to make the edges even softer. And let's see, probably that looks pretty good. And then we'll come up here for our light shaping and add the same filter, and I'm just, because I used it last, it's right on top. Gosh, maybe I want that blurred a little bit more. So let's look at it a little bit more and see, maybe I want, yeah, that looks better. Okay, so let's go back and re-blur the black. Oh yeah, much more subtle. I'm going to lower the opacity on the black and also on the white, and I need to lower it quite a bit on the white. And if I was really a good doobie, I'd mask out. Let's see, what does this mask look like? Huh. Well, I could do that. So I'm going to delete, or Control or Command D to get rid of the last mask, and then I'm going to Command or Control click on there, and now we can add up here on the light shaping, we can add a mask, but it's reverse of what I wanted, so I'm going to click on that, Control I, and oh geez, just when I thought I was going good. So I'll have to go ahead here with my brush, a black brush, less softness, a lot smaller, and just cheat a little bit and make a really quick down and dirty. I would spend more time with it ordinarily, but I'm not going to today. Alright, so as we turn these, and I'm also going to go down here and add a layer mask on the dark shaping. Just a quick little dirty one. Zoom out, Command or Control minus. Zoom in, Command or Control plus. I can also change brush size by clicking the right and left bracket key. So let's zoom in just a little bit here. I'm holding down my Z key, dragging diagonally, and as we undo those and redo the shadows, you can see it makes a difference. And maybe I want to add just a little bit more on this white there. little bit better. Okay. Now that's being real picky, and I probably shouldn't put that in, but I'm being a purist this afternoon. Well, now I'm going to add some textures to make this blend even better. And I took a picture of a concrete sidewalk someplace. I don't even remember where I took it. If I went back to the original image and I looked at the other images around it, I might be able to do a little bit more. And I do try when I placed this into Photoshop, so it comes in with the name, and this number is the camera roll number. So I can always go back and look at search for 0037 and find where the original image is and where I took it. Now I do, as I take these pictures, throw them in a folder called textures that I keep in with my photos. And it's very helpful to me to have these. You can take your own texture pictures, you can buy textures, you can find textures free different places, but nonetheless textures are helpful. Now let's make sure we're on the concrete layer and that the move tool is selected, and I want to cycle through the blend modes. Now as I look at the blend modes, the second set, darken multiply, it does just exactly what it implies here with this first layer. It darkens things down. It will also do some things with the contrast, but primarily it darkens. If we go to this third group here, the first option in this group tells you what the whole group does. It lightens it. This next set of blend modes doesn't have a nice easy name, but overlay, soft light, and all these increase the contrast tremendously, which is soft light is a very subtle increase, overlay is a bigger one, and the others are really severe, but you never know what you're going to like and what you're going to get. This next to the last group has some odd appearances. Difference is nice if you're trying to match up two layers exactly. You put one of them on blend mode, and when it's all black, they're perfectly matched. But for general use, we don't use them a lot. And the last one has to do, as you might guess, about hue and color. Primarily, you'll use the darken, the lighten, and the increased contrast areas. So as we now on a Mac, I'm going to hold down my Shift key and tap my plus key, and I do have an extended keyboard, so I have a plus key on the number pad, and I'm going to tap, and as I tap, I'm going to go through these blend modes, and you can see up here how they're changing. I'm not necessarily looking at what they are, I'm just looking at the effect they're putting on the photo, and I'm looking for one that I think I can live with. Now see, overlay isn't too bad. It gives it a real subtle texture. Soft light, you can barely see it, but it's there. Hard light, vivid, and so on and so forth. And as I go through all of them, you can see some of them don't make any difference at all. But I liked linear light. However, it is a bit severe for what I want, so I'm going to lower that opacity. And I heard someplace, and I can't remember who they said it was, but they said to start at 0 and add in effects and textures. And I like this one around 30%. You may find something a bit different that you like. You may not. Now, if I didn't want it to show on, let's say, the tie, I could add a layer mask and it wouldn't show on the tie. Or I could invert the layer mask, Command or Control I, and have it only show on the tie. At this point, I'm going to turn off the layer mask by shift clicking on it and let the whole thing show. The next texture I'm going to look at is a photograph of a slab of marble floor tile that I use as a cutting board. Kind of neat, and I am going to change this one, where am I? Right here, to, I think, linear burn. Well, I like the way that works, but it's again too much. So I'm going to take that opacity and get it to where I like the looks of the music, but it doesn't do anything for my bow tie. So I am going to put that mask on it and let the bow tie show through. Boy, I'm having a hard time getting my tongue untangled today. My next one is a photo I've taken of a piece of barnwood. I made a planter years and years ago with 6 pieces of barnwood, and it's kind of neat. It's been wet, and it's got these watermarks, and you can see the saw marks, and there's just all sorts of neat stuff going on. Now this one will add color as well as texture. If I didn't want to add the texture, I would have to desaturate this image. So let's set it to its blend mode, and I did practice ahead of time. Whoops. Let's actually be on that wood layer. Blend mode to soft light. Now you can see it has added a nice warm color to it. I happen to like warm colors, but if I didn't, I go down here to my hue and saturation adjustment layer, and I clip it to just the wood layer by clicking on this square with an arrow coming out of it, and now it only affects the layer directly below it, and I would lower that saturation. I could increase the saturation too if I wanted to, but if I didn't want the color cast, that's what I do. But I do like the color cast, so I'm going to throw away that hue and saturation layer. Now it's getting a little bit dark here, so I've added a levels adjustment layer, and you can see what I've done is I've just brought that white slider over just a little bit, and I'm going to take the gray slider towards the black, and we're going to make it a whole lot lighter. I'm looking particularly here in the shadows and these places where it's too highlighted there. Now the last time I did this, it looked much different, and I used a different adjustment, but hey. So now we've got an interesting textured file that will, as I say, unify or make cohesive a bunch of separate pictures. It's given them a color cast, so they're all going to have the same color cast. It's given them textures. It's done some really neat things. Now, one of the plugins that I really enjoy is Adobe Paper Texture Pro. You can find this at marketplace.adobe.com and search for plugins. You can search for Adobe Paper Texture. All you need is an Adobe login. You do not have to belong to the Creative Cloud. You just need to let Adobe know your name or your email address and a password, and you can download tons of stuff like brushes and plugins and textures and styles. I found a neat camouflage style not too long ago for very little or no cost. Now some of the things are actually to me worth buying, other times I just not so much, but it is kind of nice to know that that's there. Now what I'm going to do for this particular iteration, now you can put the textures on one at a time, And you notice they do tend to have colors. There's greens and golds and grays. And there's this one little pink. There's a rainbow trout color. Yeah, they're verdigris scratch, pastel copper. This is Aquarius. It looks like water. This is burnished clay, burnished brushed rose. They all have names, and they're created by flypaper textures. So anyways, you can put them on individually and choose what blend mode they're going to be. Or you can come down here and let the brainstorm do it. I'm going to say, how many textures do I want? I want 5 textures. Remember, I'm a texture fan. And I'm going to randomize the blend modes. I find if I alternate between overlay and multiply, I can keep it about the same level of brightness. If I use too many overlays, it gets too bright. If I use too many multiplies, it gets too dark. And I'm just going to create a random combination and see what happens. And you can see that this is laying on all sorts of textures as it goes. And wow, I don't particularly like that look. So I'm going to back it away a little bit and look at them individually. Now this says multiply. Again, I like that brown color, or the yellow warm color, but I'm going to back off on the opacity just a little bit. And then I'm going to look at this next one, which is in overlay mode. And it takes too much away. Gosh, maybe I should go back and look at it this way. No, I think I want the opacity just a little bit less on that, and the opacity just a little bit less on that. But I could try a soft light here. Yeah, I think I like the soft light better. And then we have this green texture, which is on multiply. Yeah, well, let's see what changing the opacity does. Not much. Let's look at it on screen. Nah. How about soft light? Again, it's a subtle difference, but I like it that way. So I'm going to just lower the opacity a teeny tiny bit. And then we've got our pink skies here. And that's on overlay. Let's look at soft light. And as I click on and off, this is definitely, I like the little color cast, but I don't want quite so much of it. And on this one, I may want to borrow this bow tie mask. I'm going to hold down my Option key and drag it up over to here. And if I look at this, I can change the density of that mask. So I can let some pink show through. Here it all shows through, and as I add a little bit, it's about halfway through. And this is really, really nice. You notice how this is no longer black, it's gray. And our last one is a green one that's on overlay. Let's see what multiply looks like. Ooh, color burn, linear burn, soft light, multiply, and lower that opacity. Okay, now at this point, I've lost some contrast, so I'm going to add a curves level adjustment, and I'm going to go down here to increase the contrast. Okay, and I'm going to change the blend mode on this one to just luminosity. Sometimes it changes the color more than you want. And actually I like that a little better. Let's try a strong contrast. Well, I guess I like just the increased contrast better. But I am going to pick this up in the middle and lighten it just a smidgen. Okay, Now the next thing I'm going to do, and I finish almost all of my photos and compositions this way, I'm going to add a vignette. To add a vignette, I'm going to get rid of this layer. I used it last time. I had a color cast I didn't like, so I'm just going to delete that layer. And I want to stamp a copy of all of these layers together. Now you can either do it on your keyboard by holding down your Shift key, your Alt, or your Option key, your Command or Control key, and the letter E, or we can go here, and I want to merge visible, but I want it on its own layer, so I am going to hold down the Alt or my Option key when I merge the visible, because if I don't do that, it's going to merge everything, and I don't want to do that. So now I have this all in its own layer, copy of everything combined, which is kind of neat. And I always layer this one, and I can go ahead and delete this other one. Whoops, not that one. I want to delete this one. I left it in so I wouldn't forget to do it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my rectangular marquee tool with 0 feather, and I am going to draw a rectangle approximately where I want the edge of the feather to be. And you know, after you've made this, you can click in the middle of it and move it around. And it doesn't have to be centered necessarily. Alright, now I'm going to go to Select, Modify, and select Feather. I prefer this method because I can see where the feather is going to be, and if I don't like it, I can just hit Control Z to undo, and it only undoes one step. 150 worked really well last time. The number you use here will depend on what the resolution of your picture is. If you shot it in RAW, you can use, and you have a newer version of Photoshop, you can go up to 350. Older versions only let you go up to 250. But nonetheless, this works for this image. And as I press OK, it shows me where the mid-range of that vignette is going to end up. Now if I don't like it, it's a simple Command or Control J, and I can just go ahead and get it back and change my number. I find that easier than having to draw and redraw and draw and redraw by using the feather up here in the options bar. Now I'm making sure I'm in the correct layer. I'm going to delete that center, and I'm going to Command or Control D to get rid of the marching ants. I'm going to set the opacity this layer to 30%. That's my go-to number. You may like more or less. I'm going to change the blend mode to multiply. And we put a little, if we look at it, we can't see, it doesn't have an obvious vignette, but it does direct your eye, or your viewer's eye, to what you want it to see. It directs it to that bow tie and the guitar on it. So this is one way I think you can integrate composites, add a lot of fun by using textures like the Texture Paper Pro plugin, by using textures of photos that you have taken yourself. GraphicAuthority.com has a bunch of different textures that they use. I have a lot of their albums and templates, but you have to pay for those. You can find textures at marketplace.adobe.com. I'm sure you can find textures other places around the web. But I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope it's been helpful to you. And it's just another way to finish off composite photos.